Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful people from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome a very, very accomplished individual from the UK, Mr. Jonathan MacDonald. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Hello. How? Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Jonathan is the Chief Executive Officer of Potency World. He's the coordinator of the Mental Wellness Society. And as all of you know, I'm always very partial to authors. He's an author. So, Jonathan, let's first talk about Potency World. Tell me about this venture.
So basically, this is a plan to revolutionize education. Essentially, we have an education system that trains brains to remember facts and then spit them out again. So as a cognitive function, it's not a very good one. There is a whole host of attributes that you as an entrepreneur, that entrepreneurs that are watching this now have or need to have to be successful. They need to understand collaboration. They need to understand intrinsic motivation and passion. They need to feel supported when they make learning through failure. And everything in education at the moment is the exact opposite of that. And people become afraid to even try. So this is a plan. I'm looking for £10 billion to produce a 10-year project that will have 10,000 girl only university academy type arrangements. But basically this will be a situation where 20% of the time of a day is spent on all the things that we as adults know young people need to know. They need to know about relationships and consent and taking photos. They need to know about financial management and looking after their finances. They need to understand if they're in a shop and it says it's this percentage or what have you, they need to be able to work that out. They need all sorts of things that currently education doesn't give them. So on the one side, 20% will be that information, plus mental health, physical health, self-defense for girls, so that girls in our foundations, we're going to take them from 11 to 18. When they come out at 18, I would put them up against a PhD, a double doctorate, anyone, because their cognitive function will be superior. And the reason I know how to do this is because I've had a bunch of strokes. I've had to relearn how to do everything, which is neuroplasticity, beg your pardon. And therefore I know that cognitive function can be changed. I'm a dyslexic and therefore I experience the world multi-perspectively. I see it from several positions all at the same time, which is very common with dyslexia. So I have glided through life. Nothing is hard. Yeah, sure. You might have to learn or read or ask or model, but it's not hard. And so I look at people going, oh, I wish I could. And you go, so many people wish and so few people do.
Correct.
That's what I'm trying to change. So Potency is 500,000 girls at the end of our 10-year project that will be so cognitively different and divergent that they will literally change the world. Because they will go into the things that they're passionate about, be it broadcasting or journalism or politics or industry, and they will have had 7 years of breaking down these paradigms, these silos that exist. And so they're going to come out and go, listen, you can do it the way you've always done it.
Correct.
But what about this? And people are going to go, yeah. So, and then it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy, basically.
Fabulous. And are these 500,000 girls going to be only in the UK, or are you?
No, I'm looking. So the initial tranche will be in 5 English-speaking countries for the ease of collaboration. In my mind, I understand that technology can and will be able to translate different voices, but it's better to have 5 English-speaking regions. But they are 5 separate locations of 10,000 girls. And the reason for that is that I want a group of girls, say 11 in London, to be able to collaborate with a group of girls in Australia about some renewable energy for Central Africa. So it's all about this cross-pollination of intrinsic motivation. So no is the quick answer. Different areas.
That's amazing, Jonathan. So now let's move on to the next part of our conversation, which is NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. Before we get into any questions, for my viewers and listeners, tell us, what is NLP?
Okay, well, look, people have different perspectives on this, and so the answer I'll give is true for me, and it's true of how I understand the material as it's written down. So NLP for me is the study of modeling.
Okay.
It's the study of, hey, if that person can do that, not like a physical thing like lifting 1,000 pounds, you're not going to be able to do that by changing how you think. But cognitive accomplishment is something that can be modeled. And so you can find out what a person, so essentially you need to know how they represent in their mind the thing they're doing. Then you need to understand the syntax, the order that things occur in their mind. And then you need to adopt the physiology, the body position associated with them doing that thing. So there's a guy called Tony Robbins. He modeled top shooters in the US Army. The Army was doing a training program that took 4 days, and they could only qualify 70% of people, and gave a 30% got marks. But he went in, modeled the top shooter, the top shooting coach, found out their beliefs, found out there were 42 distinct beliefs that top shooters had that people that failed the course didn't. Took a group of people in, told them this modeling, basically, changed their internal beliefs and gave them the physiology. He qualified 100%, and the number of top performers went up to 60%. When the Army could only get 70% pass and 30% top performer. Amazing. So that's what modeling can do.
Amazing. And
I think so.
I agree with you. I mean, and if you have belief, you will achieve it. So, exactly. Jonathan, what is neurodiversity then?
So neurodiversity is, as I alluded to earlier, I'm dyslexic. Neurodiversity is a more uplifting term for what in many educational systems are seen as learning difficulties, disabilities. Right. So dyslexia is one, dyscalculia with numbers is another, autism, ADHD, hyperactivity, all these things that... So I'm one, and I know how good my life is as a result of the way my brain works. Wonderful. So I don't see it as a disability at all.
Yeah.
The problem is...
No, so go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, the problem is that basically neurodiversity is the term that you would associate with learning disabilities in school.
Understand. Okay.
It's not a disability, though.
Understand. So, when I was reading about you, it was interesting to see that you rejected the concept of ability. You selected neuro-linguistic programming. Tell me about this one.
So I had a bunch of strokes. Last one was in 2006, and thought I was going to die. Paid for my funeral, everything sorted out for that. Got this opportunity to volunteer in a primary school, and primary children are absolutely brilliant. And I see them, I see their energy, and basically school at the moment is pretty standard all around the world. Person stands up at the front, tells people things, and then how their ability, in quotes, is how effectively they can repeat what he's told them.
Mm.
There's all sorts of behavioral things.
Mm-hmm.
There's all sorts of belief things. There's all sorts of agency things that result, and psychological and physiological as well, that lead to performance.
Okay.
And education as it stands currently, especially for young children, couldn't be worse. It couldn't be worse if it tried. It's horrific. It is bullying, and it is forcing and creating a belief system that leads to the adults of today. And by and large, we ain't that good because we've ruined the planet. So, yeah, so trying to create more of us by being repressive, that's why you get this apparent difference in ability, because people are scared, intimidated, afraid, and all the wrong emotions.
That's it.
Yeah. So ability doesn't exist except in the minds of people that need to create a score.
So let's move on, Jonathan, and let's talk about what you're doing for children. And you say that you're keeping the lights on in children, and you're also releasing rather than restricting the natural energy of children. Can you help me understand with some examples or anecdotes?
Well, basically, I spent 7 years after I first volunteered. I spent 7 years creating this program for children. The light, keeping the eye experience, I have a visual representation of children when they're happy. They literally glow, in my mind.
Correct.
Now, that's something dyslexics can do that I read in a book called The Gift of Dyslexia. So for me, if a child is happy, they're open to learning in a way that, it's just beyond. So I designed this program based on an NLP, based on the Unleash the Power Within seminar by Tony Robbins, all screaming and leaping about and jumping and having great fun, whilst interspersing it with videos about perception, about visual illusions, about the idea of beliefs, but all video clips, stuff like that. It was all fun things, and the children were up on their feet for at least half of an hour, leaping about, jumping, shouting, screaming. And you get them in that state, and then I created an anchor, which is I used a tap, tap, tap to the forehead because it's visible. So if one child sees another child doing it, it aids to the belief system. And basically, I would walk into the school past a window with a class, and the children would go as I walk past, lifted up just by seeing me.
Wow.
Because that's the anchor I left them with, oh, wow. Trouble is, education as it is now sees fun and work as two distinct and opposite things.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
And,
And, again, to pick up from something that you have written and sent to me, what is conditioned consciousness?
So that is basically the result of schooling as it is now. You take a baby, so babies in utero pick up a little bit of language from the mother's voice, they pick up a little bit of diet from the food they're eating, but you basically come out with all these brain cells, and then what happens is there's a process called neurosynaptic pruning, and you essentially become conditioned for the society you're in. Which is great because it's allowed a vessel part of humans to spread around the world.
Right.
Unfortunately, we cut away 80% of our synaptic connections in this process of making people what they have to be for our society.
Understand.
And there are lots of things that are unpleasant. So, for example, FGM, female genital mutilation.
Mhm.
Now, it happens a lot in India and Bangladesh. It also happens in the UK.
Correct.
And the belief behind that practice is not one I share, but it's one that, despite the pain and the lack of sensation for the woman afterwards, mothers will do to their daughters because it's happened to them.
Wow.
That's conditioned consciousness. We carry on around this cycle because we cannot break away from our own conditioned consciousness.
Interesting. So coming back to NLP, it is often referred to as a pseudoscience.
Yes.
I'd love to get your perspective.
Well, that's why I said what it meant for me and how I understood it at the beginning when we talked about it before, because a lot of it, so there are lots of people that offer these free NLP seminars. You go along and basically they show you a couple of magic tricks because it looks like magic to someone who's uninitiated, and then it's a hard sell, and they sell, oh yeah, buy our program now and you get this much off and this. But I've been to a few of them because I wanted to see how it was done by the people.
Correct.
And there are some bad agents in the NLP world, as there are in all worlds.
They're everywhere.
And they are the people that would lead to a pseudoscience perspective, I think, because they are the people that hawk it out to anyone just for the money and not for what it's able to do. I think it's about a personal tool to use on your own brain to affect change, not to try and change other people.
Fascinating. So you also say that truth is a perspective, nothing more.
Yeah.
And, this is something which is there in the old Hindu scriptures for thousands of years. That the only thing is truth. So I would like to understand your thoughts on your comment, truth is a perspective, nothing more. And also if you can share an anecdote or a story.
Okay, so essentially, before I knew I had dyslexia, I've experienced the world multi-perspectively all the time. Therefore, my experience of life up until I found out how my brain worked differently, well, someone would say, oh, Jonathan, this is the situation. And I go, I see what you're pointing out, but. And what looks like a wall to most people looks like, and I've written in my profile, I think I've written in a profile, looks like Swiss cheese to me. It's got holes all over it because when you look at different perspectives, you can always find a way, basically. And what I think is, I don't have religious faith, but what I think is that people throughout time have access to an interpretation of truth. And all of the different perspectives are basically all looking at the same truth. And the only barrier to enlightenment is that from this person's truth, they need to be aware of all the others. Not in an abstract fashion, but in a, oh, that's you looking at the same thing, as opposed to, oh, ours is the right way, you must be like us or we're going to kill you, which is the way it is at the moment.
Very interesting. So, Jonathan, I'm now going to move to the last segment of our conversation, which is your avatar as an author.
Yes.
Tell me about your books.
So I've only done one so far. I've started on the second. Basically, the first book was called Children Are Spectacular, Why Aren't More Adults? And it's about what we've been talking about today, that essentially you take a child who's brilliant and you turn them into an adult who's unhappy at best. So I wrote a book. It's very, very long. And it wouldn't be something that normal people should read. In fact, I didn't even write it for people to read. I wrote it because during my 7.5 years of experiments in primary schools to keep these lights on. As I went further and further, I diverged from education to such an extent. And so I thought, I'll write down all the things I know about why they work. So I've referenced 200 books in my own book. And it's basically, what I've done is, it's all about the experience, about me, about the experiments. And then the last section is called A Treatise on the Evolution of Human Consciousness.
Wow.
Because I really believe that the limiting factor, as I said, between where we are now and enlightenment in our lives, not in some separate entity, but enlightenment as we are today, is achieved when people have true free will. And we are all, because it's all other people's books. I mean, I've got a pile of 20 here. There's so many different people that have got little bits of the picture. And I assemble the picture as a whole and go, oh, that's linked to that, that's linked to that, like that. So I've forgotten the question now. Tell me again.
You're telling me about your book and
oh yeah, the book. So I just basically, when you write a book, you get an ISBN number. In the UK, that means that the British Library has to have a copy, and to list it on Amazon, they need 6 copies. So basically, my thing was just write the information down. I'm before my time, but someone in the future might read this and go, ooh.
I'm sure. You know, as long as you've written the book, someone will read it. That's the most important thing. Yes. And what about your second book? Are you at liberty to speak about it?
I am at liberty to speak about it. So Potency World is for the female education. And so my current book I'm writing is called Girls Are Spectacular, Why Aren't More Women? And I'll be referencing hundreds of books in that as well.
Wonderful. So Jonathan, on that note, we've now run out of time, but thank you so much for this absolutely incredible conversation. You know, I've learned so many new things about NLP from you today. Thank you again. All the very best for your new book, and keep smiling.
Yeah, I will do. Thank you very much for having me on, and good luck with all the talks. I'm going to look at many of them after this.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.